Chapter 4974. The power and speed of condensing the gemstone were top-notch, but Kong Shinmu's perception of the void power was also top-notch at this stage. He sensed in advance that the condensing gemstone wanted to travel through the void to attack him after condensing its power. Then, he condensed the power of the brilliant gemstone there in advance. Fortunately, the power of the condensing gemstone was completely condensed. Hence, Kong Shinmu only needed to condense the power of the brilliant gemstone to a small area. If he wanted to fully unfold the brilliant gemstone to defend his entire body, it would not be something that could be done in an instant. However, this time, in order to resist the power of the condensing gemstone, Kong Shinmu unleashed the power of the brilliant gemstone in an instant. Of course, this also consumed almost all the energy of the brilliant gemstone. Kong Shinmu's devouring power immediately engulfed the golden flame beam condensed by his opponent. These powers were what Kong Shinmu could use to replenish the brilliant gemstone. At the same time, Kong Shinmu's devouring power that was eroding Zhao Qingtian's divine dragon body did not stop at all. It continued to devour Zhao Qingtian's power and absorbed half of his power in a short time. That made Zhao Qingtian feel hopeless. This was because he saw that the power of his condensed night stone was actually unable to defeat Jiang Shunwu. This was a devastating blow to him. After using the condensed night stone, under normal circumstances, he would not be able to use this dragon weapon for a very long time. Although he still had other tricks up his sleeves, it meant that some time had been consumed. Once the power in his body was completely devoured, he was sure that he would not be a match for Kong Shinmu. He did not cultivate any body-tempering dragon martial arts technique. Once his power was completely devoured, he would become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Even if the physical strength of the super divine dragon was much stronger than that of an ordinary dragon emperor, would he still dare to treat Kong Shinmu as an ordinary dragon emperor? If he were an ordinary dragon emperor, he might not be able to defeat Zhao Qingtian even if he were to face an exhausted Zhao Qingtian. After all, he had the foundation of a super divine dragon, and the strength of his divine dragon body was already rather domineering. However, Kong Shinmu was an exception. Kong Shinmu was not an ordinary dragon emperor at all. Hence, Zhao Qingtian dared not be careless at all. He exerted all of his energy and calmed his mind. In the next moment, he activated another brilliant material in the resplendent golden radiance of the super divine dragon weapon. Endless, endless. This material was the Milky Way gem, an extremely precious material. Each gem was worth 100,000 gold dragon coins. It was a super material that Zhao Qingtian used to create the Milky Way gem. The effect of the resplendent golden radiance was to restore all of the power of. In this way, the dazzling golden radiance that couldn't be used because it was condensing the gemstone was instantly restored to its almost perfect state. It was filled with energy, and then, Super Divine Dragon Technique, Descent of Chaos Divine Fire. In the next moment, the 999 strands of golden flames erupted and actually formed a canopy of chaotic divine flames. It rumbled as it condensed in the space around Jiang Shunwu, and it completely sealed off that expanse of space. This was Zhao Qingtian's trump card. He used the strongest Super Divine Dragon Technique, Descent of Chaos Divine Fire, with the Super Divine Dragon Weapon. If the condensed golden radiance was an ordinary trump card, then the Descent of Chaos Divine Fire would be his trump card. Because there were many people who could resist the condensed rose stone, many people would relax after resisting the attack of condensing the rose stone. Unfortunately, Zhao Qingtian's real trump card was the Sky River Rose Stone after condensing the rose stone. Under the recovery effect of the Milky Way precious stone, the power of the resplendent golden radiance was completely restored. Zhao Qingtian used it again to release the Descent of Chaos Divine Fire, a fire attribute Super Divine Dragon Technique. This was a high-grade Super Divine Dragon Technique and was considered one of the best fire attribute Super Divine Dragon Techniques. Furthermore, it had the terrifying effect of sealing the void. After being hit by this move, it was basically impossible to escape through the void unless one's power was much greater than Zhao Qingtian's. But now, Kong Shinmu obviously couldn't reach the level where he could crush Zhao Qingtian. If he couldn't crush Zhao Qingtian, it meant that Kong Shinmu definitely couldn't escape from the void seal. The Descent of Chaos Divine Fire suddenly appeared. This move almost exhausted all of Zhao Qingtian's power and the power of the resplendent golden radiance of the Super Divine Dragon Weapon. An extremely terrifying power erupted, and it was as if a huge flaming sun had appeared in the field. Meanwhile, Kong Shinmu's entire black dragon body had been enveloped by the huge flaming sun and was completely sealed within it. This was an extremely shocking scene. Everyone widened their eyes at this moment, wanting to know if Kong Shinmu would lose to Zhao Qingtian. Could he defeat Zhao Qingtian? Based on the current situation, once Kong Shinmu couldn't resist it, he would be killed by the descent of Chaos Divine Fire. But then, Starry Sky Rune, Starry Sky Kingdom. No one knew what technique Kong Shinmu, who was completely enveloped by the descent of Chaos Divine Fire, performed at this moment. However, Kong Shinmu knew very well what he could do in the face of this move. The Starry Sky Kingdom of Starry Sky Rune was a powerful technique that could open up an alternate space. It was condensed by 3 crystal runes at the same time, in addition to 12 golden runes. This could be said to be the strongest Starry Sky Rune that Kong Shinmu had mastered. The previous Starry Sky Decomposition was the strongest offensive Starry Sky Rune, while the Starry Sky Kingdom was the most difficult combination of Starry Sky runes to open up an alternate space. Kong Shinmu directly opened up the Starry Sky Kingdom. In this area where the void was sealed, he could also tear the void apart and hide in it. Kong Shinmu, who was in the alternate space, was already completely separated from the original space. Any changes in the outside world wouldn't affect Kong Shinmu. Hence, when the descent of Chaos Divine Fire completely enveloped the space and turned it into a sea of fire, Kong Shinmu's black dragon body had already hidden in the alternate space of the Starry Sky Kingdom. The blazing flames that erupted caused the incomparably hot temperature to spread to the surroundings, and then condensed in the center before exploding with a loud bang. At this last moment, no one around saw Kong Shinmu escape from that space. As the descent of Chaos Divine Fire finally collapsed and exploded, a sea of fire occupied everyone's vision. No one saw Kong Shinmu escape, which meant, has Kong Shinmu been killed? It's very likely that the space has been completely sealed. Even the alternate space can't be opened up. Chapter 4975. Zhao Qingtian's descent of the Chaos Divine Flame was undoubtedly one of his strongest means. Therefore, when the Chaos Divine Flame descended and enveloped the entire space where Kong Shinmu was, everyone thought that Kong Shinmu could not resist it and had even died in the Divine Flame. However, only those who were familiar with Kong Shinmu knew that it was impossible for Kong Shinmu to be defeated or killed so easily. Just as everyone was pointing and guessing what had happened, the primal Chaos Divine Flame that had enveloped the surroundings finally dissipated after an incense stick's worth of time. What appeared in front of everyone wasn't Jiang Shenwu's black dragon corpse. Instead, it was a constantly rotating Starry Sky Kingdom. This Starry Sky Kingdom was an alternate space. In everyone's eyes, the starry sky swirled. However, it seemed illusory and didn't exist. It was completely incompatible with this world. The flowing starlight seemed to have formed a world of its own, and nothing from the outside world could affect this world. Without a doubt, Kong Shinmu was hiding in that alternate space. Most of the dragon martialists watching the battle knew about the existence of the alternate space. It was an independent world that was different from the outside world. Nothing from the outside world could affect the alternate space, but mastering the alternate space required an extremely high attainment in the power of the void. Even when Zhao Qingtian used the descent of the Chaos Divine Flame, the space had been sealed. Under such circumstances, how could he open up an alternate space? It could only be said that Kong Shinmu's comprehension and attainment in the power of the void had far surpassed Zhao Qingtian's. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to reach this point and break through Zhao Qingtian's seal of the void to open up an alternate space. Zhao Qingtian had never thought that his seal of the void would be broken by Kong Shinmu, and that he could even open up an alternate space to avoid the descent of his Chaos Divine Flame. Zhao Qingtian almost could not believe this. Without a doubt, Zhao Qingtian had never encountered such a situation before. Generally speaking, those who could break through his spatial seal were definitely powerhouses who could resist the descent of his Chaos Divine Fire. But now, it was clear that Kong Shinmu was unable to withstand the descending attack of his primal Chaos Divine Flame and had hidden himself in an alternate dimension. And it just so happened that Kong Shinmu's comprehension of the space-type void energy far surpassed his own. What kind of situation was this? This kid. The new inheritance he obtained is related to space, right? Zhao Qingtian gritted his teeth and thought. However, before he could react, Kong Shinmu's black divine dragon body flew out of the Starry Sky Kingdom. Then the head of the divine dragon glanced at Zhao Qingtian. Phantom Ghost Book. 9-layer gemstone. Jiang Shenwu's Voidwalker Ghost Book erupted with all its might. A page appeared above the black divine dragon's body, and then it emitted endless power of the void. His phantom ghost book had been dazzled 3 times. The first was, of course, the Sky Gem, which increased the effect of all the battle runes of the phantom ghost book by 50%. The second was the Void Gem, which increased the power by relying on the perception of the void. The third was the 9-layer gem. The 9-layer gem was an extremely powerful multi-use gem. This kind of dazzling material could not only be used on attack-type battle soldiers, but also on defense-type battle soldiers. Its effect was to directly summon the same dragon technique from the void according to the number of void battle runes of the battle soldier. It was equivalent to the effect of multiple casting. For example, Kong Shinmu's Phantom Ghost Book had 240 void battle runes. Coupled with the effect of the Sky Gem, it was equivalent to the effect of 360 battle runes. When the power of the 9-layer gem was activated, it could directly erupt 4 times. Releasing a 9-layer ultimate Roaring Dragon Burst was equivalent to releasing it 4 times, and the remaining 3 attacks with a power condensed from the void. On the other hand, Jiang Shenwu's Rose of Nothingness relied on his perception of the power of the void to increase its power. Now, Jiang Shenwu's perception of the space-type void power had reached the peak of his current level. Previously, he did not activate the power of the Void Gem because it was not necessary. However now, he decided to kill Zhao Qingtian. Therefore, the power of the Void Gem and the 9-layer gem were all activated by him. Based on his current understanding of the void energy, the Void Gem could increase the power of his attack by 3 times. This was the terrifying effect of the Void Gem. Together with the 9-layer ultimate Roaring Dragon Burst, Kong Shinmu directly erupted with the highest number of 9 attacks. 9-layer ultimate Roaring Dragon Burst. When Kong Shinmu performed this move and the Phantom Ghost Book's brilliance effect was fully activated, 8 alternate spaces appeared in the space. From those 8 alternate spaces, 9 layers of darkness from the 9-layer ultimate Roaring Dragon Burst appeared. The 9 layers of darkness erupted with light waves that enveloped Zhao Qingtian's flaming divine dragon body. Altogether, there were 81 Roaring Dragon Bursts. This was extremely terrifying. Every Roaring Dragon Burst was the crystallization of Kong Shinmu's strongest attack power. Now the power of 81 Roaring Dragon Bursts enveloped Zhao Qingtian's divine dragon body, making it impossible for him to escape. Perhaps Zhao Qingtian wanted to avoid Kong Shinmu's attack, but Kong Shinmu immediately performed the inherited martial technique of the Starry Sky power, a type of star rune, the Void Star Seal. 1 crystal rune, 5 golden runes, and even more silver runes combined to form the power of the Void Star Seal, forming a starry sky that enveloped the space. With Kong Shinmu's perception and understanding of the void power, it was impossible for Zhao Qingtian to break the power of the Void Star Seal and escape this space. Immediately after, 81 Roaring Dragon Bursts erupted almost at the same time. This scene shocked the entire crowd. Extremely terrifying energy waves erupted next to Zhao Qingtian's flaming divine dragon body. It was extremely shocking, but no one could see what was happening in the field. When Kong Shinmu appeared from the Chaos Divine Fire, everyone had a premonition that Zhao Qingtian might not be a match for him today. However, no one expected Kong Shinmu's attack to be so fierce. This was almost a technique that Kong Shinmu had never displayed before. A total of 81 Roaring Dragon Bursts shocked everyone. After the explosion, Zhao Qingtian's divine dragon howl could be heard. Obviously, Zhao Qingtian was really injured this time. Moreover, his injuries were definitely not light. The Roaring Dragon Bursts came and went quickly. After all, it was an explosion that condensed all the power into a single point, so it could not last for too long. When the devouring power of the black attribute dissipated, everyone saw that Zhao Qingtian's Inferno Divine Dragon Body was riddled with holes. Although he had used his defensive dragon weapon and dragon martial technique to defend himself, he hadn't been able to withstand the might of the 81 Black Dragon Bursts. Chapter 4976. No one could imagine that Zhao Qingtian would be severely injured by Kong Shinmu. Although Kong Shinmu seemed to have unleashed his strongest attack, the power of the 81 Hydra Dragon explosions was simply earth-shattering. It definitely belonged to the Supreme God level, and had even touched the threshold of the Supreme God level 4. This was because Kong Shinmu had not only unleashed the effect of the 9-layer gem, but he had also used the ability of the Void Gem. Most importantly, he had the power of the Galaxy Inheritance. Without the power of the Galaxy Inheritance, Kong Shinmu's move would at most be able to deal with a Supreme God level 1 opponent. He would definitely not be a match for Zhao Qingtian. But now, it was a crushing defeat. It could be said to be a crushing defeat. The 81 Hydra Dragon explosions exploded, and Zhao Qingtian was unable to resist them. His entire flaming divine dragon body was hit and landed on the ground below, creating a deep pit and stirring up a cloud of dust. Everyone stared at the cloud of dust and saw that Zhao Qingtian's raging flame divine dragon body couldn't move at all. They were in disbelief. Wasn't this too terrifying? Kong Shinmu was only at the Dragon Emperor level 7. How could he defeat the famous Zhao Qingtian? One must know that Zhao Qingtian was a powerful existence at the Supreme God level 3. In the past, an ordinary Dragon Emperor at his peak would not be a match for an ordinary Supreme God level 1. Only a top-notch Dragon Emperor at his peak could defeat an ordinary Supreme God level 1. That was why a Supreme God level powerhouse went to the Dragon Martial Continent to be the Dean of the Dragon Martial Academy. He had enough power to suppress them because it was almost a crushing power. But now, Kong Shinmu seemed to have subverted this saying and had even crushed Zhao Qingtian, who was at the Supreme God level 3. It was simply unimaginable. I won, right? Kong Shinmu couldn't help but shake his head when he saw that Zhao Qingtian's divine dragon body didn't move at all. This guy has no willpower. To be honest, Zhao Qingtian's injury was nothing compared to Kong Shinmu's previous extreme state. For Kong Shinmu, it was just an ordinary injury. It was not a fatal injury. In this state, Kong Shinmu could even burst out all his power, but Zhao Qingtian didn't move at all. Of course, this guy was not Kong Shinmu's opponent now. Even if he moved, he would lose even more miserably. It was not a bad choice to lie on the ground and not get up. Of course you won. The master of the Gu family was still in disbelief. He looked at Zhao Qingtian's body on the ground speechlessly and shook his head. He thought Zhao Qingtian was very powerful. In fact, he could tell that Zhao Qingtian was very powerful, but that was all. Apart from his powerful divine dragon weapon that had shown 4 times, Zhao Qingtian didn't perform anything outstanding in this battle. The reason why he had such achievements and fame was because he had a good background. If someone else was in his position, they would definitely do better than him. Even when fighting against Kong Shinmu, who was on the 7th level of the Dragon Emperor, he was suppressed everywhere. In fact, he didn't even make Kong Shinmu suffer a single loss in the entire battle. Zhao Qingtian was too weak. Since I won, this guy won't dare to propose to the Gu family in the future, right? If he comes again, I don't mind reporting to my master. Kong Shinmu said faintly and turned to leave. Hearing his words, the surrounding spectators were a little emotional. Kong Shinmu was really too powerful. Moreover, he didn't take the opportunity to make any requests after winning this time. He only asked Kong Shinmu not to propose to the Gu family again. In the crowd, Feng Baixue was so angry that her face was almost crooked. She really didn't expect Kong Shinmu to be so powerful, that even Zhao Qingtian was no longer a match for Kong Shinmu. If Kong Shinmu was given more time, wouldn't it mean that Kong Shinmu would be invincible? Once he reached the Supreme Master level, Feng Baixue shook her head with a gloomy expression. She couldn't imagine what kind of terrifying existence Kong Shinmu would become if he reached the Supreme Master level. I won't let you continue to improve, Feng Baixue thought to herself. She looked at Kong Shinmu's back as he left and turned to leave as well. There were also Kong Shinmu's friends in the crowd. Xiao Bai, Xiao Yuhua, Liang Xiao, and Ran Ran were silent when they saw this scene. They really didn't expect Kong Shinmu to surpass them so much after not seeing him for a while. Putting everything else aside, the 4 of them together couldn't beat a level 1 transcendent god. However, Kong Shinmu could now deal with a level 3 transcendent god. Was the brand new power of inheritance really that powerful? However, Kong Shinmu didn't seem to use much of the power of inheritance in this battle. It seemed to be the power of the dragon gods. How did he do it? Not to mention outsiders, even Xiao Bai, Ran Ran, and the others who were close to Kong Shinmu couldn't figure it out. By the way, Shen Wu shouldn't be together with the Gu family's lady, right? Liang Xiao suddenly asked. As soon as he said this, the 3 women next to him glared at him. They've been together for a long time. However, I don't think Shen Wu knows it himself. Xiao Bai glared at him and shook her head with a complicated expression. Let's go to the Gu family to take a look. Ran Ran was much more direct. She got up and prepared to set off. Anyway, it wasn't far from the 5 Extremes' mysterious ice city. They couldn't possibly reject them if they flew over as guests, right? Moreover, Kong Shinmu would definitely come out to welcome them. Therefore, not long after Kong Shinmu returned to the Gu family residence, Ran Ran and the other 3 came to visit. When Kong Shinmu heard the news, he immediately came out to welcome them. Everyone, it's been a long time. Kong Shinmu appeared in front of them. When he saw the 4 of them, he was a little emotional. These 4 were his best friends and teammates when he was in the Dragon Martial Continent. After he left them a sacred item from the evil prince of the demon god race, the Scarlet Rose fan. That was why they could reach their current level. However, to be honest, the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. The 4 of them were still improving at the Dragon Emperor stage. In order to make their cultivation realm reach its strongest state, they were still stuck at the Dragon Emperor stage and challenged the second reincarnation beast. Their improvement was very fast. However, compared to Kong Shinmu, they couldn't catch up. Chapter 4977. Kong Shinmu and the master of the Gu family received Ran Ran and the other 3. Although they had not seen each other for a long time, they were still very close to each other, especially Ran Ran. For Ran Ran, she had lost her memories of the past, so she was very close to Kong Shinmu. She had always been like Kong Shinmu's little attendant. It was not until they came to the Dragon God's great world that Ran Ran and Kong Shinmu had not seen each other for such a long time. But to be honest, if Kong Shinmu had not stayed in the small world of the Starry Sky Inheritance for so long, he would have taken the initiative to find them and communicate with them. Liang Xiao, you have a 58 Divine Dragon Blood Essence compatibility. When you reach the 8th floor of the Dragon Emperor, come to me directly. Xiao Yuhua, you too. When you reach the 9th floor of the Dragon Emperor, come to me too. As for Xiao Bai, when Xiao Yuhua and Liang Xiao come to me, you will know why you come to me when you encounter a bottleneck in the grade of your blood essence. Of course, you will meet later than them. After all, your compatibility is higher. But I will tell you a secret. As long as you have my help, the bottleneck in the grade of your blood essence does not exist at all. I can let you ignore the bottleneck in the grade of your divine dragon blood essence. When the master of the Gu family left, Kong Shinmu was frank with them. Because they were all very good friends, there was no need to hide anything. Anyway, he would help them improve their cultivation sooner or later. After hearing Kong Shinmu's words, the 4 of them did not believe it, especially Ran Ran. She felt that the distance between her and Kong Shinmu was getting farther and farther. In the past, Kong Shinmu would tell her some of his secrets earlier. But now, she seemed to be drifting further and further away from Kong Shinmu. The distance between her and Kong Shinmu was also getting further and further. It was as if she couldn't even touch Kong Shinmu anymore. However, she didn't believe it. After all, she didn't have any memories of her past, so she was very naive when it came to relationships. So she nodded and said, "In that case, it will be a long time before I can ask you for help. But I don't care. I'll follow you wherever you go." Ran Ran's compatibility level was 72. She could reach the level of the Supreme Divine Dragon without any bottlenecks. Therefore, it would indeed be a very long time before she encountered a bottleneck. However, she didn't plan on looking for Kong Shinmu's help at that time. That was too far away. So she decided to follow Kong Shinmu. No matter where Kong Shinmu went, she would follow. When Kong Shinmu heard that, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "All right, then you can stay with me. But remember, you can't fall behind in your cultivation. I should be staying in the 5 Extremes mysterious ice holy land for a period of time. Are you guys coming with me?" The 5 Extremes mysterious ice holy land was indeed a holy land for cultivation for most dragon martial artists. Whether it was the dragon mark energy or the heaven and earth spiritual chi, the density of the 5 Extremes mysterious ice holy land far exceeded that of other places. It was even more than 10 times that of the 4 great dragon martial academies in the martial dragon continent. Moreover, the higher the level of the disciples, the denser the dragon mark energy in their residences. This was something that couldn't be compared to other places. Therefore, when Kong Shinmu prepared to calm down and improve his cultivation and blood essence grade, he also planned to do so in the 5 Extremes mysterious ice holy land. He was currently a 5th-class disciple of the 5 Extremes mysterious ice holy land, but he had just defeated Zhao Qingtian. His status had probably surpassed ordinary 6th-class disciples and reached the level of a 7th-class disciple. This kind of improvement speed was simply unimaginable. It had to be said that how long had it been since Kong Xinmu appeared in front of everyone? He had actually risen from a junior to the status of a 7th-class disciple. Although he was still a 5th-class disciple, everyone already treated him as a 7th-class disciple. After all, even Zhao Qingtian had been defeated by Kong Xinmu. This was enough to see Kong Xinmu's strength and potential. Perhaps at some point in time, Kong Xinmu would become an existence comparable to a supreme powerhouse. Moreover, Kong Xinmu now had Emperor Shi mystical dragon behind him. He had already become a supreme powerhouse, and he was also one of the best among the supreme powerhouses. His strength had increased greatly after he had obtained the Heaven and Earth Holy Grade, and his prestige had spread far and wide. In terms of prestige, Emperor Shi mystical dragon was more respected and admired than the current Kong Xinmu. After all, Kong Xinmu had always shown his super strong combat power, but he hadn't brought much contribution to the dragon gods. Emperor Shi's combat prowess as a divine dragon was clear for all to see. Most importantly, she had brought far too many benefits to the entire dragon god clan. Her contributions to the entire dragon god clan were truly innumerable. She had defeated too many powerful enemies who wanted to invade the dragon god's world. Therefore, now, Kong Xinmu and Emperor Shi mystical dragon were almost a whole. When outsiders mentioned Kong Xinmu, they would mention Emperor Shi mystical dragon, and then they would be more optimistic about Kong Xinmu's future. This could be said to be a virtuous cycle. For Zhao Qingtian, the following days would probably not be easy. A real genius could grow in adversity. Once they reached a favorable situation, they could soar to the sky. For someone like Zhao Qingtian, who had lived a luxurious life since he was a child and had endless cultivation resources, if he really had talent, he should have become a stronger existence. How could he still be at the 3rd level of Super Dragon? He couldn't even defeat Kong Xinmu, who was at the 7th level of Dragon Emperor. This was undoubtedly a shame. With Kong Xinmu as a comparison, everyone could see the fact that Zhao Qingtian, who looked like a genius, was actually just an ordinary person. It was just that they were born in a more noble family and had stronger elders who gave them more resources. In other aspects, Zhao Qingtian was not even comparable to an ordinary person. Zhao Qingtian was much weaker than the experts at the 3rd level of Supreme God who had fought in the life and death arena. Once he was on a real battlefield, he would probably be in a worse state than when he fought with Kong Xinmu today. All in all, Zhao Qingtian quickly disappeared. He didn't come to the Gu family to ask for Gu Xinyue's hand in marriage, nor did he ask the elders to help him regain his reputation. As for Gu Xinyue and the others, they didn't come out of the starry sky small world either. Kong Xinmu decided to return to the holy lands of 5 extremes dark ice first to improve his cultivation and the divine dragon's blood essence. At the very least, he had to reach the peak of the Dragon Emperor stage. As for the power of the starry sky inheritance, Kong Xinmu seemed to have encountered a bottleneck in this aspect. According to the demonic god ancestor, this was because the cultivation of the dragon gods, which he mainly cultivated, was still too low. He couldn't bear the more powerful power of the starry sky inheritance. Chapter 4978. Before heading to the 5 extremes mysterious ice holy land, Kong Xinmu first brought everyone back to the Dragon Martial Continent. There were still many people Kong Xinmu cared about in the Dragon Martial Continent, mainly the Devouring Dragon Group in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court. After this period of growth, the Devouring Dragon Group was completely different from when it was first formed. When the Devourer clan was first formed, the strongest member was Yun Yue. Now, however, there were a few others who were as strong as her. Including Li Xian and Wang Yuer, their strength was on par with Yun Yue. They had already stepped into the Dragon's sovereign realm. After the divine dragon's inherited blood essence reached the Dragon's sovereign realm, their entire temperament changed drastically, and they couldn't believe the speed of their improvement. Originally, to them, the Dragon Emperor was the strongest existence in this world, the greatest ruler in this world. But now, they themselves had become the Dragon Emperor. A year ago, this was completely unimaginable. One had to know that they were only at the level of the Holy Dragon, not even at the level of the Dragon King. But now, they had directly crossed 2 major realms and reached the level of the Dragon Emperor. Not only that, but their cultivation levels were also increasing rapidly. Originally at the Dragon Ascension and Divine Martial realms, They were now existences at the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Moreover, they were considered relatively strong among the Nirvana Tribulation realms. Every time they broke through, they would definitely defeat 2 Nirvana beasts, and then absorb as much Nirvana power as possible. This way, their combat strength could be said to be at the top among those of the same realm. And this was only the increase in their cultivation levels. The biggest change that happened to them was the many battles and experiences they had experienced in this long period of time. They did not completely cultivate in Flame Dragon City. Instead, they constantly looked for opportunities to accept some training missions to train. This included the Demon Hunters Association's training missions, which were their main source of training. It had to be said that in the process of training, they had also experienced a lot of training at the beginning. After all, at the beginning, their combat strength was not too strong, and they did not even receive a strong impartation of dragon martial techniques. Therefore, there were always some accidents when they fought outside. Fortunately, the Dragon Emperor always sent people to protect them, allowing each of them to escape from some dangerous situations. And now, there were a total of 5 people in the Devouring Dragon Corps who had reached the level of the Dragon Emperor. This had already surpassed the people that the Dragon Emperor had sent to protect them. This speed of improvement was simply unimaginable. And all of this was because of the cultivation resources that Kong Shinmu had provided. To Kong Shinmu, these cultivation resources were nothing, but to these geniuses who had not reached the Dragon Emperor level, these were like dew after the rain. But to these geniuses, these resources were like dew after the rain. These geniuses were the geniuses of Emperor. When Jiang Xinwu returned to the Fire Dragon Empire, he discovered that the number of people in the Devouring Dragon group had not changed at all. There were still 62 people. It could be seen that when Kong Shinmu wasn't around, the others didn't have the mood to recruit new members of the Devouring Dragon group. After all, apart from Kong Shinmu, no one else could see the compatibility between others and the Divine Dragon's blood essence. Therefore, the same number of people when Kong Shinmu left would be the same number when he returned. Among the 62, there were already 5 at the Dragon Emperor level. The strongest, Yuni Yue, had already reached the 2nd stage of the Dragon Emperor. She had already begun to cultivate the Holy Spirit Dragon martial technique, which had been given to her by the higher-ups. Speaking of this matter, Dragon Emperor Yen sighed incomparably. All of this is because of you, Kong Shinmu. Little brother, your talent is too shocking. When Dragon Emperor Yen was with Kong Shinmu, he couldn't help but smile helplessly. You already have the strength to become the Dean of Dragon Martial Academy, right? This speed of improvement is really terrifying. There's no one else like you in this world. And the founder of Emperor Shi Dragon Martial Academy, who is also your master, Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon, found out about your Devouring Dragon Corps and personally came to find me. She didn't appear in front of the members of the Devouring Dragon Corps, but she secretly gave me more resources, including some Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques. These Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques were all given to qualified members of the Devouring Dragon Corps by her. When Kong Shinmu found out about this, he was a little surprised. He didn't expect Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon to help him cultivate the Devouring Dragon Corps. Originally, Kong Shinmu thought that when the members of the Devouring Dragon Corps reached the Dragon Emperor level, he would think of a way to find some suitable Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques for them to cultivate. He didn't expect that before he returned, Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon had already done all this. This saved Kong Shinmu a lot of effort. It should be known that it wasn't easy to just choose a few suitable Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques for each member of the Devouring Dragon Corps to cultivate. After all, every member of the Devouring Dragon Corps had different talents. Their talents also had different attributes. It was impossible to give them a unified dragon martial technique. Therefore, Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon actually brought over hundreds of Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques this time, which really solved a lot of trouble for Kong Shinmu. These Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques were nothing to Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon. She only needed to ask, and a large number of people would come to her. But to Kong Shinmu, if he wanted to get them, he would have to pay at least hundreds of thousands of gold dragon coins. This was the standard market price for Holy Spirit Dragon martial techniques. No matter what, Kong Shinmu remembered Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon's help. Moreover, Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon purposely didn't appear in front of the members of the Devouring Dragon Corps in order to maintain Kong Shinmu's prestige. After all, in the eyes of the members of the Devouring Dragon Corps, Kong Shinmu should be the strongest existence. He was their biggest leader. Without Kong Shinmu, there wouldn't be a Devouring Dragon Corps. Now, There was a rule in the Devouring Dragon Corps. After reaching the level of the Dragon Emperor, they were qualified to leave the Devouring Dragon Corps for a period of time. They could return to their hometown and so on. Although they had only left for 1 or 2 years, every member of the Devouring Dragon Corps had undergone earth-shaking changes. If they returned to their hometown, it could be said that they had returned home in glory. No matter what kind of trouble their loved ones encountered, with their current strength, they could easily solve it. It was a pity that many people didn't have such a chance because they hadn't reached the level of the Dragon Emperor. But other than the 5 Dragon Emperors, the remaining 59 people were all at the level of the high-level Dragon King. Even the lowest was at the 7th level of the Dragon King. This was enough to prove that the members of the Devouring Dragon Corps that Kong Shin-mu had found were outstanding seedlings. Chapter 4979. The Devouring Dragon Group had already evolved, but it was still some distance away from what Kong Shin-mu had requested. At the very least, if they were brought out now, all the members of the Devouring Dragon Group combined would not be able to deal with a peak Dragon Emperor. Therefore, Kong Shin-mu did not intend to bring them out. This time, Kong Shin-mu only came to see them and understand their situation. In Yen Dragon City, Zhu Wudi and Qin Xiaoye had been teaching the Devouring Dragon Group together for a long time. Although they were students of Donghuang Yonggu College, they did not stay in Donghuang Yonggu College. Instead, they stayed in Yen Dragon City and were responsible for nurturing the Devouring Dragon Group. They had always admired Kong Shin-mu, and the Devouring Dragon Group could be said to be a force that Kong Shin-mu had built himself. If they participated in nurturing them, they would definitely benefit in the future. Moreover, how could Kong Shin-mu let them help for free if they came to help? Therefore, he would definitely provide them with abundant cultivation resources. At the very least, they would not need to worry about cultivation resources when they were at the Dragon Emperor stage. Now, the 2 of them were experts at the 7th level of the Dragon Emperor stage. Moreover, they were at the peak of the 9th level of the Reincarnation Tribulation Realm. Every level after that was a result of defeating 2 reincarnation behemoths. It was a great help to their overall strength. This was all because of Kong Shin-mu. In fact, they did not follow the usual practice of going to the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land when they reached the 5th level of the Dragon Emperor and stayed there for a year to try and join the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. This was because Kong Shin-mu had already told them about the compatibility of their divine dragon inheritance and essence blood. Therefore, there was no need to go to the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land to take the test. Most importantly, even if they went to the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land, it would not be as good as training the members of the Devouring Dragon Group here. On one hand, they had sufficient cultivation resources. On the other hand, they could also train the members of the Devouring Dragon Group as instructors. Of course, from a certain perspective, Qin Xiaoye and Absolute Invincible had a good relationship with the members of the Devouring Dragon Group. They could even be considered friends. After all, they were all about the same age. It was just that Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi were luckier. Their backgrounds were better than theirs, so they had the opportunity to join Donghuang Yonggu College. Otherwise, even with Qin Xiaoyu's unparalleled talent, she wouldn't have been able to join Donghuang Yonggu College. This was fate. Therefore, Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi cherished every member of the Devouring Dragon Group. After all, none of these people were any less talented than them. However, they had been trapped in their birthplaces for various reasons. It was only now that their talents had been discovered by Kong Shin-mu that they had the opportunity to join the Devouring Dragon Group. It had to be said that Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi felt sorry for the Devouring Dragon Society's members. But it was also because of this that their relationship with the Devouring Dragon Society members was quite good. Especially Zhu Wudi and Li Xian, both of them had become sworn brothers. Let's not talk about this for the time being. Kong Shin-mu had stayed for quite a long time. Apart from bringing back some cultivation resources, he had also brought back some divine dragon weapons. Divine dragon weapons were specially made for Dragon Emperor level dragon warriors to use. Kong Shin-mu didn't bring back many this time. Moreover, they might not be suitable for the members of the Devouring Dragon Group. Thus, he handed them over to Zhu Wudi and Qin Xiaoye to arrange for them to be distributed to the members of the Devouring Dragon Group. As for Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi, Kong Shin-mu had already prepared Heaven Divine Dragon weapons for them. He had even prepared an amazing gem for each of them. The provision of cultivation resources could be said to be absolutely in place. And this also made Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi regard Kong Shin-mu as a confidant. In the past, because of the dean of Donghuang Yonggu College, Zhuo Xiaofeng, Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi couldn't be too close to Kong Xinmu in private. But now, Zhuo Xiaofeng had directly stepped down. The newly appointed dean of Donghuang Yonggu College admired Kong Xinmu a lot. Therefore, even if Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi stayed in Fiery Dragon City, it would be fine. Moreover, it was said that Chu Yueqiang was now following Kong Xinmu and had cultivated the super-powerful inheritance power from the intermediate relics. This news made Qing Tian Dragon Calamity quite happy and gratified. Sure enough, as long as one followed Kong Xinmu, there would be many benefits. And now, Kong Xinmu's reputation could even be said to have reached the level of a very powerful super dragon god. This was all because of what he had done recently. After defeating Zhao Qingtian, Kong Xinmu's reputation would definitely spread far and wide. Kong Xinmu did not stay in Fiery Dragon City for too long, because he was also at a crucial stage of cultivation. Other things aside, if it were not for the fact that Kong Xinmu had just defeated Zhao Qingtian, who was at Transcendent Level 3, Kong Xinmu would probably be looked down upon when he returned to the Devouring Dragon Clan with his current Dragon God Blood Essence grade. After all, Qin Xiaoye and Zhu Wudi were already at Dragon Emperor Level 7. If Kong Xinmu was only at this level, wouldn't he look very weak? In the eyes of all the members of the Devouring Dragon Clan, especially Yun Yue, Yun Yiru, and Wang Yuer, Kong Xinmu was completely sacred and inviolable. Kong Xinmu had even become their idol. After all, it was Kong Xinmu who had rescued them from their respective predicaments. If it were not for Kong Xinmu, Yun Yue did not know what would have happened to her now. She might have already been violated by that ugly fellow. Let's not talk about the past. Even though Kong Xinmu had returned with the Dragon God Blood Essence grade of Dragon Emperor Level 7, Kong Xinmu had defeated Zhao Qingtian first. This matter had already made the Devouring Dragon Clan worship Kong Xinmu even more. This battle record was a little too terrifying. A Dragon Emperor Level 7 defeating a Super Dragon Level 3. It was unimaginable. To the members of the Devouring Dragon Clan, the Dragon Emperor was already extremely powerful, close to the pinnacle. Meanwhile, the Super Dragon God was a legendary existence, at the level of the deans of the 4 major dragon martial academies. However, Kong Xinmu had defeated Zhao Qingtian, who was said to be more than qualified to be the deans of the 4 major dragon martial academies. In other words, other than the dean of Emperor Shi's Dragon Martial Academy, Yu Yaji, Kong Xinmu was already the strongest person in the Dragon Martial Continent. As for Yu Yaji, she was also the disciple of Emperor Shi's Divine Dragon Martial Academy and Kong Xinmu's senior sister. It could be said that Kong Xinmu was someone who could do whatever he wanted in the entire Dragon Martial Continent. One could only imagine his status. If it were not for the fact that Kong Xinmu's ambitions were not in the Dragon Martial Continent, he could totally do whatever he wanted in the Dragon Martial Continent. After all, what he wanted to do the most now was to continue improving himself and make himself stronger. The current him was far from the pinnacle. He could not even meet the lowest requirement. Chapter 4980. After returning from the Martial Dragon Continent, Kong Xinmu went to the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. As a 5th-class disciple of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land, Kong Xinmu had a residence in the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. The density of the Heaven-Earth Spirit Qi and Dragon Mark energy far exceeded that of the outside world. The higher the disciple's rank, the better the residence. However, Kong Xinmu had missed the opening of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Tower after leaving the small cosmos, so he couldn't raise his disciple's rank. He could only cultivate in the residence of a 5th-class disciple. However, even this place was an excellent place for Kong Xinmu to cultivate. After all, Kong Xinmu had the devouring power, which allowed him to absorb the surrounding Heaven-Earth Spirit Qi and Dragon Mark energy far faster than ordinary people. Even 7th-class and 8th-class disciples might not be able to absorb the Dragon Mark energy as fast as Kong Xinmu, even though the Dragon Mark energy was more concentrated in their residences. Therefore, for a period of time, Jiang Xinwu's days became leisurely. Xiao Bai, Ran Ran, Xiao Yuhua, and Liang Xiao were all 4th-class disciples. They cultivated in a residence 1 level lower than Kong Xinmu's. Although the Heaven-Earth Spirit Qi and Dragon Mark energy weren't as rich as Kong Xinmu's, it was more than enough for them. It could be said that their progress was similar to Zhu Wudi's and Qin Xiaoye's. However, in terms of combat strength, They were definitely better than Zhu Wudi and Qin Xiaoye. After all, they had experienced the trials of elementary ruins. They had more experience in facing all kinds of dangerous situations. Before he knew it, Kong Xinmu had already cultivated in the Five Extremes mysterious Ice Holy Land for a month. During this month, he didn't devour the energy of the dragon mark. Instead, he focused on devouring the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around him. 3 days ago, he successfully defeated 2 reincarnation beasts and reached the 9th level of the reincarnation state. This was the true peak of the reincarnation realm. If he wanted to reach the next level in terms of cultivation, he had to reach the super divine dragon. In other words, the transcendent level was a combination of the grade of inherited blood essence and the level of one's cultivation. If he wanted to break through to the transcendent god level, he had to raise the quality of his inherited blood essence and his cultivation level to the peak. The transcendent god level was the combination of the quality of his blood essence and his cultivation level. Therefore, after Kong Xinmu's cultivation level reached the peak of the reincarnation tribulation realm, the next step was to raise the grade of the divine dragon's inheritance blood essence. The peak of the reincarnation tribulation realm has doubled my combat power. If I were to fight Zhao Qingtian now, I don't seem to have much of an advantage. It's the same as before. This caused Kong Xinmu to smile bitterly. He defeated Zhao Qingtian mainly by relying on his Starry Sky inheritance. Although others did not know, Kong Xinmu knew very well that the Starry Sky inheritance accounted for at least 90% of his strength when he defeated Zhao Qingtian. Now that his strength as a dragon warrior had doubled, he did not seem to have much of an advantage if he were to fight Zhao Qingtian again. However, on this day, Kong Xinmu welcomed an old friend, or rather, several old friends. Kong Xinmu did not expect that people would come to his place. Yu Tianchong, Feng Ligei, and Gu Yuxing. These 3 women could be said to be the super geniuses that Kong Xinmu had met in the Dragon Martial Continent before he reached the level of the Dragon Emperor. Among them, Yu Tianchong had a close relationship with Kong Xinmu. After all, without Yu Tianchong, Kong Xinmu might not have been able to enter Emperor Shi's Dragon Martial Arts Academy, and he might not have achieved what he had today. As for Feng Ligei and Gu Yuxing, Kong Xinmu was not very familiar with them. He only knew that Feng Ligei was the top genius of Emperor Shi's Dragon Martial Arts Academy, and he ranked first among the students of Emperor Shi's Dragon Martial Arts Academy all year round. As for Gu Yuxing, he was also a genius of the Hidden Dragon Warrior family, who joined Emperor Shi's Dragon Martial Arts Academy at that time. The 3 of them were originally extremely dazzling in the 4 Dragon Martial Arts Academies. They were extremely talented, and their battle prowess was even more extraordinary. Unfortunately, not long after the crack in the void appeared, they all reached the level of the 5th level of the Dragon Emperor. According to the rules, they left the Dragon Martial Continent and went directly to the Holy Lands of 5 Extremes mysterious ice to cultivate for a year. Kong Xinmu had heard that in this 1 year, the 3 of them had cultivated very quickly, and their speed of improvement could be described as terrifying. Therefore, after a year, they did not return to the Dragon Martial Continent, but directly took on some tasks in the Holy Lands of 5 Extremes mysterious ice. Now that the enemy had invaded the Dragon God's world, their task was to go to the front line and fight the enemy head-on. This was something that only the truly powerful could do. Kong Xinmu had long heard about this. Moreover, the 3 of them had long reached the peak of the 9th level of the Dragon Emperor, and now they should all be at the stage of breaking through to the Super Shenron. Why did they come looking for Kong Xinmu at this time? Kong Xinmu did not expect the 3 of them to come looking for him. When he saw the 3 beautiful girls appear in his residence, he was very surprised. The 3 of you, it's been a long time. Kong Xinmu faced the 3 of them, but he was calm. After all, after obtaining the power of the Starry Sky inheritance, his strength surpassed the 3 of them. In fact, even if the 3 of them worked together, they might not be a match for Kong Xinmu. However, although the 3 of them were not considered elders of Kong Xinmu, they were a few years older than Kong Xinmu, mainly because they had more experience than Kong Xinmu, so Kong Xinmu still respected them. Kong Xinmu, I did not expect you to be in the limelight now, and your strength to improve so quickly. Yu Tianchong, who was the most familiar with Kong Xinmu, was the first to cover her mouth and chuckle. She was wearing a soft satin dress, which made her look extremely virtuous, but it couldn't hide her breathtaking beauty. Even now, Kong Xinmu could not help but be attracted to her. But apart from Yu Tianchong, whether it was Gu Yuxing or Feng Ligei, they were not ordinary girls, and were equally stunning. Among them, Gu Yusheng was soft and weak, looking very gentle, without that fierce arrogance. But from her eyes, it could be seen that this girl's willpower was absolutely strong. Feng Ligay, on the other hand, was different from the two girls. She had short hair and a straightforward expression, looking like a female general. The three girls looked to have different styles and tastes. Even for Kong Xinmu, they all had a strong attraction. Unfortunately, there were many girls around Kong Xinmu, and it was really not suitable for him to get involved with more girls. So he asked in a more reserved manner, "Big sister, you flatter me. May I know why the three of you came looking for me today?" Chapter 4981. Yu Tianchong and Kong Xinmu were quite familiar with each other. So she didn't say any polite words to Kong Xinmu. She went straight to the point and said, "Xinwu, you are very strong now. It is very likely that the three of us together are no match for you. In this case, are you interested in going to the front line to gain experience?" The front line? Kong Xinmu narrowed his eyes. The front line is the place where we fight against foreign enemies. Feng Ligay looked valiant and said to Kong Xinmu with a smile, "Now many foreign enemies are attacking our Dragon God clan's big world. Many strong warriors of the Dragon God clan are fighting against them at the front line. They kill the enemies, but they will also be killed by the enemies. Your master, Emperor Shi, is guarding a fortress in the outer realm of the Dragon God clan." "Well, I see." Kong Xinmu nodded. He understood why they were here. So he looked at the three women with a smile and said, "I don't plan to go to the front line yet. Of course, it's not that I don't want to contribute to the Dragon God clan, but I feel that my strength is not enough to make a big contribution to the Dragon God clan. Instead of going to the front line now, I'd better improve myself first. In addition, as long as there is news of the relic, I will definitely go to the relic. This is also a contribution to the Dragon God clan, right?" To be honest, he was not very willing to go to the front line now. It was not that he was afraid of death, but for him, improving himself was indeed the most important thing. Gu Yusheng covered her mouth and chuckled. "I know that you got a sacred treasure of heaven and earth in the relic last time, which is a great contribution to the Dragon God clan. After getting that sacred treasure of heaven and earth, the situation in the fortress where Emperor Shi is located was directly stabilized. However, you may not know what kind of improvement you can get in the front line." Speaking of this, Kong Xinmu was a little interested. Oh! Kong Xinmu wanted to know what benefits he could get in the front line. At the front line, as long as you kill the enemy, you will be able to obtain battle merits, which can be used to exchange for many heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Yu Tianchong said straightforwardly, "If we weren't at the front line, we wouldn't have reached the peak of Dragon Emperor so quickly. Moreover, we're going to try to break through to Super Shenron soon. If ordinary people were at the front line, their gains might not be as steady as staying in the Holy Land. But Kong Xinmu, you're different. Your battle prowess far surpasses other dragon martial artists of the same level. Once you head to the front lines, you'll definitely be able to make great contributions. In this way, you'll be able to gain much more than if you were to cultivate in the Holy Land. Conservatively speaking, with your current status as a 5th-class disciple, as long as you perform normally, your rate of improvement will be at least twice as fast as if you had stayed in the 5 extreme profound ice Holy Land." Upon hearing this news, Kong Xinmu was a little surprised. He knew that there would definitely be some rewards for fighting the enemy on the front line, but he didn't expect that the rewards would be so generous. "If I can improve faster, that would be great." Kong Xinmu nodded solemnly. He wasn't afraid of danger. Whether it was the front lines or the ruins, where wouldn't there be danger? What he was most worried about was that his rate of improvement was too slow. If he had known that the front lines would improve extremely quickly, he would have gone there long ago. Even if he wasn't very strong, it would be fine as long as he could stay alive. Right now, Kong Xinmu believed that his ability to stay alive was absolutely top-notch. At least among cultivators of the same realm, Kong Xinmu's ability to stay alive was considered the strongest. It could even reach the level of some super divine dragons. "Kong Xinmu, I want to ask you something." Yu Tianchong suddenly said with a solemn expression, "When you defeated Zhao Qing Tian, can you always use your battle prowess, or can you only use it for a short period of time?" "We have a plan. We can use the grade of our inherited blood essence to create a false impression to attract some super divine dragons. Once we can kill the other party, our rewards will be very exciting. Not only can we plunder the other party's belongings, but we can also obtain massive amounts of battle prowess. A super divine level expert has a very high status for any race. Hearing Yu Tianchong's words, Kong Xinmu suddenly narrowed his eyes. He nodded and said, "That is to say, you want me to go to the front lines with you and use my current cultivation to lure stronger opponents and kill them, right? I think there's no problem with this plan. As for the battle prowess I had when I defeated Zhao Qingtian, although I can't always have that kind of battle prowess, I can use it when necessary. It should be no problem for me to kill 2 people like Zhao Qingtian in a row, provided that you guys can hold the other one for me. I have to kill one of them first." This was a more accurate description of the upper limit of his ability. Of course, Kong Xinmu also hid something. In fact, it should not be too much of a problem for him to face 2 Zhao Qingtians directly. But for the sake of insurance, he had to let them be fully prepared. They could not rely on Kong Xinmu alone for such a hunt, could they? Therefore, they also had to play their due role. Otherwise, why would Kong Xinmu cooperate with them? In terms of cooperation, Kong Xinmu was only interested in Yu Tianchong. After all, Yu Tianchong had a good relationship with him. Even if Yu Tianchong simply asked him for help and did not give him any share of the reward, Kong Xinmu would not say anything. It was just a matter of a few words. "Okay, once we succeed, you will get 50% of the reward." Yu Tianchong finally broke into a smile. Her smile was like a blooming flower, which made people feel refreshed. "I don't need 50%. We can share it equally. By the way, are there only 4 of us in the team? Is there anyone else?" Kong Xinmu suddenly asked. "There is no one else but the 3 of us and you." Feng Ligay raised his eyebrows. "Kong Xinmu, are you sure you don't want 50% of the reward? It's a lot of reward. I heard that you have set up a devouring dragon group in the Dragon Martial Continent. It will take a lot of resources to train them. You don't have to be so polite. Everyone has contributed in this matter. Of course, it's better to share the reward equally." Kong Xinmu shook his head. He was not willing to take advantage of others. Seeing his stubbornness, Yu Tianchong immediately frowned. She ran up to him and pinched his arm. She said fiercely, "I'll give you 50%, so just take it. Without you, how could we even think about fighting supreme experts? You have contributed the most, and you are the key person. It's not too much to ask for 50%. Chapter 4982. Kong Xinmu was dumbfounded by Yu Tianshang's words. How domineering! She even insisted on giving him 50% of the reward. In that case, Kong Xinmu had nothing more to say. Who wouldn't want to be rewarded more? However, Kong Xinmu felt that he had taken advantage of them and felt bad about it. After all, Yu Tianshang had already helped him a lot. Now that she was giving him 50% of the reward, why did he feel that he owed Yu Tianshang more and more? But then again, it was not easy for Kong Xinmu to ambush a supreme god-level enemy. First of all, Yu Tianshang and the others had provided him with information that their area of activity was near the fortress where Emperor Shi Divine Dragon was. That area was mainly attacked by the Fu Shui tribe. Of course, after Emperor Shi Divine Dragon obtained the sacred item of heaven and earth, the frequency of the Fu Shui tribe's attacks dropped. Now, the Fu Shui tribe and the dragon gods were fighting in the outer domain. There was no large-scale attack. It was under this premise that Yu Tianshang and the others' plan had an opportunity. Otherwise, how could they have such an exquisite plan in the midst of a great war? The Fu Shui tribe had many supreme god-level experts, but the key was to lure out those below the 3rd level of supreme god level. Otherwise, even Kong Xinmu might not be able to kill them. Of course, the plan was left to Yu Tianshang and the others to complete. As long as Kong Xinmu was prepared, he would be able to deal with a supreme god-level expert from the Fu Shui tribe. Jiang Shenwu wasn't unfamiliar with dealing with the Talisman Aqua race. Back in the Martial Dragon Continent's Starry Sky battlefield, he had dealt with quite a few powerful Talisman Aqua race. Of course, the Talisman Aqua race he had dealt with back then were nothing compared to the current Jiang Shenwu. The supreme god level. I reached it so quickly. Kong Xinmu felt a little emotional. Once upon a time, the supreme god level was an unattainable dream for him. At that time, Kong Xinmu had only been at the level of the Dragon Emperor. He knew that once he reached the supreme god level, he would reach another level. Super Divine Dragon was the name of the Dragon God clan's transcendent level. Once one became a Super Divine Dragon, they would be qualified to become the Dean of the 4 great Dragon Martial Academies. They would be the strongest existence in the Dragon Martial continent. In the past, Kong Shinmu could only look up to Supreme God-level opponents. When the Void monsters invaded, Kong Shinmu could only deal with some of the weaker monsters. If a transcendent monster appeared, he could only rely on the deans of the 4 great Dragon and Martial Academies to deal with it. It could be said that Kong Shinmu's improvement during this period could almost be described as a dream. Not to mention outsiders, even he himself had a feeling of disbelief. And all of this originated from the devouring power. Although it seemed that he did not have that kind of explosive growth, the benefits that the devouring power brought him were dozens of times faster than others' cultivation speed. Kong Shinmu went from being a junior to being able to defeat Zhao Qingtian, who was at the 3rd level of the Super Divine Dragon. This could no longer be described as rapid improvement. In fact, in the history of the Dragon God clan, no one had been able to improve as fast as Kong Shinmu. Of course, this was only referring to Kong Shinmu's real combat power. As for Kong Shinmu's cultivation level and the grade of the inherited blood essence, he was steady and did not seem to be in a hurry at all. And the most puzzling thing was, how could Kong Shinmu defeat Zhao Qingtian with such low cultivation level and the grade of the inherited blood essence? All the secrets were in the power of the Starry Sky inheritance. Let's not talk about this for now. Kong Shinmu planned to go to the front line to deal with a supreme god-level expert from the Fu Shui tribe. This news was naturally kept secret. Only Yu Tianchong and the other 2, as well as Kong Shinmu, knew about it. For Kong Shinmu, there was nothing to prepare for. But Yu Tianchong and the others had to carry out the plan. The plan had to be complete, including collecting information about the target, gathering information, and so on. If there was any mistake, it was likely that the hunt would fail. For Kong Shinmu, it was not too difficult to defeat a supreme god-level expert. Of course, this referred to those below the 3rd level of the Super Divine Dragon. But the most important thing was to make sure that the supreme god-level expert could not escape and take the bait obediently. Because of this, Kong Shinmu felt that it was not very kind of him to take 50% of the reward. He was just a little stronger. But then again, if he could not defeat the supreme god-level expert, it would be useless no matter how many plans he had. Moreover, the core of this plan was to have the ability to defeat the 3rd level of the Super Divine Dragon. Moreover, Kong Shinmu seemed to be only at the 7th level of the Dragon Emperor, which was even more confusing. All in all, 3 days passed quickly as they waited. Within 3 days, Kong Shinmu first informed Ran Ran, Xiao Bai, and the others that he would be leaving for a period of time, so that they could cultivate well. 3 days later, Yu Tianchong arrived at Kong Shinmu's residence alone. "How is it? Are you ready?" Yu Tianchong was dressed in a long green dress and looked extremely fresh and cute. One could not help but feel love for her. Such a beautiful woman coming to Kong Shinmu's residence alone was equivalent to being alone with him. However, for Kong Shinmu, Yu Tianchong was his senior sister, so he did not have any improper thoughts. Although this woman's charm and temptation were amazing, and even Zhou Xiaofeng could not resist it, Kong Shinmu was still able to control himself. "I'm ready. Let's go." Kong Shinmu nodded. "Where are Gu Yuxing and Feng Ligei?" "They are getting ready outside the Outer Realm Fortress. I will come to pick you up." Yu Tianchong pursed her lips and chuckled. She looked like a goddess. "Let's go." After saying that, she left with Kong Shinmu. The place they were going to was the ancient space-time formation of the Holy Land of 5 Extremes Dark Ice. Only through the space-time formation could they reach the front line in an instant, which was the Outer Realm Fortress belonging to the Dragon Gods. Therefore, the Outer Realm Fortress could not be lost. Once it was lost, the Outer Realm Fortress would be destroyed. Otherwise, others could directly enter the hinterland of the Dragon Gods' world through the space-time formation in the Outer Realm Fortress. For the Dragon Gods, this would be a huge loss that they could not accept. The 2 of them walked together, and they were very close to each other. Even Kong Shinmu could smell the tempting fragrance wafting from her body. The other dragon warriors passing by envied Kong Shinmu to death when they saw this scene. After all, there were not many beauties like Yu Tianchong even in the entire Holy Land of 5 Extremes Dark Ice. Compared with Gu Yuxing and Feng Ligei, Yu Tianchong was undoubtedly more beautiful, and her figure was more sexy, which made people palpitate uncontrollably. Chapter 4983. On the way, Kong Shinmu didn't pay much attention to his surroundings. When they arrived at the space-time portal, Yu Tianchong had already made the necessary arrangements. Taking Jiang Shenwu with her, she stepped into it. Traveling through the void through the space-time portal naturally required resources, which was why he had to pay gold dragon coins. Of course, Yu Tianshang paid for Kong Shinmu's portion directly. As a white light flickered in front of Kong Shinmu, the scene changed, and he appeared on another space-time formation. This one looked relatively new, and didn't have the ancient aura of the Holy Land. When he appeared, Kong Shinmu found that Yu Tianshang was still holding his hand. The smooth and delicate feeling in his hand fascinated Kong Shinmu a little. He had to admit that this feeling was really irresistible. Fortunately, Yu Tianshang took care of him a little when they were traveling through the space-time formation. She let go of his hand when they were done traveling through the space-time formation. Even so, Kong Shinmu still felt a little nostalgic. "What are you thinking about?" "This way." Yu Tianshang rolled her eyes at him and pretended to be a little angry. This woman, who was known as the charming Dragon Emperor in Donghuang Yonggu College, was like a little girl in front of Kong Shinmu. Her appearance almost intoxicated Kong Shinmu. It had to be said that Yu Tianshang's beauty was well known, but when she was really gentle, it was when she was the most irresistible. Her usual state really made people feel that she could be watched from afar, but not played with, as if she was 1,000 miles away. But Yu Tianshang seemed to have a good impression of Kong Shinmu from the beginning, and it wasn't until now that she started to feel special. When they were in Donghuang Yonggu College, Yu Tianshang took good care of Kong Shinmu. This was the reason why Zhuo Xiaofeng targeted Kong Shinmu. Otherwise, Zhuo Xiaofeng wouldn't have targeted Kong Shinmu. Zhuo Xiaofeng did a series of things for Yu Tianshang, which led to him being punished by the Dragon of Calamity and imprisoned. As for how long he would be imprisoned, Kong Shinmu didn't know, and it was none of his business. Zhuo Xiaofeng was only at the first stage of the Super Dragon God. Now, Kong Shinmu could easily defeat Zhuo Xiaofeng, let alone 10 or 20 years later. By that time, Zhuo Xiaofeng would probably be like a child in front of Kong Shinmu. Therefore, Kong Shinmu didn't think too much about it. Then, he walked with Yu Tianshang and left the bright hall of the space-time formation together. Out of the hall, Kong Shinmu found that it was a rather spectacular building. The whole building was a huge palace with a dome, and there seemed to be many different halls of the space-time formation that could be transported to different places. Outside the huge palace, Kong Shinmu saw a steel fortress. This steel fortress was called Fortress Iron Phoenix. It wasn't named because of Emperor Shi's divine dragon, but because it was inherited from ancient times. Around Fortress Iron Phoenix was a boundless plain. This plain was a subsidiary small world of the Dragon God's clan, and it had always been the territory of the Dragon God's clan. But now, apart from the Iron Phoenix fortress, the surrounding plains of this small world were practically occupied by the Talisman Aqua tribe. It wasn't that the Fu Shui tribe was too strong, but now the Dragon God's clan was besieged from all sides, and several subsidiary small worlds were attacked by other clans at the same time. Once these small worlds were attacked, even if the space-time formation in the fortress was destroyed in advance, they couldn't protect the Dragon God's clan world. Because the subsidiary small worlds of the Dragon God's clan were connected to the Great World, there were space cracks that could lead directly to the Great World, and those cracks were the safest places protected in the fortress. Once it was attacked by foreign enemies, they could only retreat to the Dragon God's clan world. At that time, the whole Dragon God's clan world would be in chaos. Fortress Iron Phoenix was located in the center of the outer domain. Around the outer domain was an endless void, which was similar to the outside of the Dragon Martial Continent. And the vastness of the whole plain was far less than that of the Dragon Martial Continent. This was just a small world in the outer domain, and it could be said to be a fragment of the Dragon God's clan world. It was not like the Dragon Martial Continent, which was an independent small world that belonged to the Dragon God's clan. Now, Fortress Iron Phoenix was under the jurisdiction of Emperor Shi's divine dragon. Therefore, Emperor Shi divine dragon didn't have much time to leave here, and Kong Shinmu had only seen Emperor Shi divine dragon 2 or 3 times so far. Speaking of which, during the arena battle in the Dragon Martial Continent, Emperor Shi divine dragon stayed with us for so long. Who was guarding Fortress Iron Phoenix? Kong Shinmu suddenly thought of this and whispered to Yu Tianchong. At that time, Yu Tianchong smiled and said, the one who went to the Dragon Martial Continent was just a doppelganger of Emperor Shi Divine Dragon. Emperor Shi Divine Dragon never left Fortress Iron Phoenix. Otherwise, Fortress Iron Phoenix would have been destroyed long ago. In the past, Fortress Iron Phoenix was guarded by a total of 5 Supreme Realm Seniors. But since Emperor Shi Divine Dragon got that sacred treasure of heaven and earth, this place has been guarded by her alone, because she alone is enough to guard it. The other 4 seniors were transferred to other places to relieve the pressure in other places. Hearing Yu Tianchong's words, Kong Xinmu nodded to show that he understood. At the same time, Kong Xinmu was a little emotional. The Emperor Shi Divine Dragon he saw before was actually just a doppelganger. Just a doppelganger gave Kong Xinmu a sense of incomparable majesty. How powerful was the real body of Emperor Shi Divine Dragon? How mighty was it? Let's not talk about this. Kong Xinmu looked around the entire Fortress Iron Phoenix. This Fortress Iron Phoenix was extremely vast, and it was surrounded by fortress walls made of the strongest dragon iron rock. Outside the walls that were thousands of feet high, it was said that there was a layer of supreme barrier protecting it. This layer of supreme barrier was jointly set up by many Supreme Realm experts a long time ago to protect Fortress Iron Phoenix from being invaded. Now, this supreme barrier was the biggest obstacle to the enemy. Of course, this was in the past. Originally, as long as the supreme barrier was broken, the Talisman Water Tribe could basically attack the interior of Fortress Iron Phoenix and try to break through. But now, in addition to this supreme barrier, they also had to consider Emperor Shi Divine Dragon's sacred treasure of heaven and earth with 9 layers of engravings. When Emperor Shi's mystical dragon first obtained it, it immediately activated its power and slaughtered the Fu Shui race army that was attacking the supreme barrier. At least a few thousand king-level and above experts had died. This attack caused the Talisman Water Tribe to suffer heavy losses. Until now, they had not been able to recover. Chapter 4984. Kong Xinmu followed Yu Tianchong all the way to Iron Phoenix Fortress. He now had a general understanding of the situation of Iron Phoenix Fortress. In the Dragon God's macro world, there were many similar fortresses, which were the main defense lines of the Dragon God's macro world. Every defense line was crucial. Since the fortress of Iron Phoenix was relatively stable, there weren't many battles happening in this area. Of course, not many battles did not mean that there were no battles. As long as they left Iron Phoenix Fortress, they could encounter some patrol troops of the Fu Shui clan at any time. If they were not strong enough, they could not come back alive. Therefore, it was still dangerous outside Iron Phoenix Fortress. However, the Dragon Gods were not completely without advantages. After the general of the Fu Shui clan outside Iron Phoenix Fortress ordered to retreat, the Fu Shui clan was also retreating. The patrol area of the Fu Shui clan scouts was getting smaller and smaller, and they were getting farther and farther away from Iron Phoenix Fortress. The stronghold of the Fu Shui clan outside Iron Phoenix Fortress was a space crack. This space crack appeared 20 million miles away from Iron Phoenix Fortress, and it was surrounded by the defense lines of the Fu Shui clan's barracks. The experts of the Divine Dragon clan had already explored and found that the spatial crack led to somewhere in the chaotic battlefield. It did not lead to the macro world of the Fu Shui tribe. Therefore, it was almost impossible to attack the macro world of the Fu Shui tribe from there. If the space crack hadn't happened to appear, it would have been impossible for the Fu Shui tribe and the other 3 tribes to attack the Dragon Gods, because they couldn't come to the Dragon Gods macro world and find the entrance to the Dragon Gods macro world. But a while ago, in some of the outer domain strongholds outside the Dragon God clan's big world, space fissures appeared almost at the same time. In this way, some of the races that had grudges against the Dragon God clan in the past would naturally not let go of this opportunity. Generally speaking, the macro worlds of all clans were hidden, and no one could find out where they were. However, no one could stop the occasional appearance of these spatial rifts, nor could they seal them. They could only prepare to defend against them after they appeared. So far, there were still many fortresses in fierce battles. The situation of those fortresses was not optimistic, but in any case, the Dragon Gods would not let their opponents break into the fortresses. This was the most basic defensive goal. As for the outer realm being occupied by the other side, this was not important. In any case, all the known spatial rifts would only last for a short period of time. They would not stay there forever. In this case, as long as the space crack disappeared, It would be time for the Dragon God clan to counterattack. From the Dragon God clan's macro world, powerful dragon warriors could be continuously sent into the outer domain. But once the space crack disappeared, the remaining enemies could only wait to be slaughtered. Even a supreme existence could not survive the siege of the Dragon God clan. Kong Xinmu first followed Yu Tianshang to walk around some areas of Fortress Iron Phoenix, getting a general understanding of the situation in the fortress. Now, there were still many dragon warriors in the Fortress of Iron Phoenix. There were at least thousands or even tens of thousands of them. Of course, these dragon warriors came here with the goal of gaining experience. They were not the garrison troops of the Dragon God clan who followed Emperor Shi to guard the Fortress of Iron Phoenix. And these dragon warriors would basically form some teams to leave Fortress Iron Phoenix to gain experience. They would look for some patrol teams of the Talisman Water clan with fewer people and weaker strength to hunt. Once they succeeded, they would get achievement points, and the harvest would be quite terrifying. Of course, compared to Jiang Xinwu's strength, the harvest was definitely incomparable. However, for ordinary dragon martial artists, it was already quite attractive. At the very least, it was several times faster than them staying in the sacred land and cultivating bitterly. If they were lucky, they could also get some extremely valuable treasures, which could be exchanged for treasures that were useful to them, such as brilliant materials, high-quality dragon weapons, and so on. All in all, the current Fortress Iron Phoenix was not in a period of fierce fighting, so it was a relatively safe place to gain experience. Other fortresses that were in a period of fierce fighting were much more dangerous. Not only did the adventurers have to face more and stronger opponents, but regular hostile troops could appear at any time in the battle, and they also needed to listen to the command of the garrison troops of the Dragon God clan when necessary. Of course, in a fortress that was in a period of fierce fighting, once they could get achievement points, the harvest would be greater, but the risk was much greater. For Kong Xinmu, this time everything was arranged by Yu Tianshang and the other two women, so he didn't need to think about anything else. He only needed to deal with an expert of the Talisman Water clan. Well, now leave the fortress with me. Yu Tianshang quickly took Kong Xinmu from the center of Fortress Iron Phoenix to the eastern gate. The gate was high and closed. If he wanted to leave, he could only report his identity and leave from the side door. Generally speaking, the four main city gates of the Fortress of Iron Phoenix were rarely opened. Yu Tianshang could prove her identity. As for Kong Xinmu, as the personal disciple of Emperor Shi, this identity had long been known in Fortress Iron Phoenix, so the two of them left Fortress Iron Phoenix without any obstacles. Kong Xinmu felt that when they left from the side door, there seemed to be many invisible power barriers in the whole fortress. If it was not their own people who wanted to go out, others who tried to break in would be ambushed and attacked at least 10 times. This was one of the details that made Fortress Iron Phoenix stand firm. Even all the fortresses of the Dragon God clan were like this, and this was just a small detail. But for Kong Xinmu, just by seeing this detail, he knew how difficult it was to break into Fortress Iron Phoenix. Even the side door and the small passage was so heavily guarded, not to mention other places. However, they still have the mood to attack with such a heavy defense. On the contrary, they retreated as soon as the 9-layered holy object of heaven and earth appeared. How powerful is the 9-layered holy object of heaven and earth? Kong Xinmu was a little emotional now. He thought of his starry sky small world, which was a holy object of heaven and earth with a total of 12 layers of engravings. If all of them were unlocked, how powerful would it be? Chapter 4985. Putting aside the power of a heaven and earth saint treasure for the moment, Jiang Xinwu followed Yu Tianchang all the way to the outside of Fortress Iron Phoenix. Outside the Fortress of Iron Phoenix, it was almost a desolate scene of devastation. There were almost no plants on the ground. However, due to the frequent battles, it was full of potholes. There was no flat place at all. This was also because the small domain where the Iron Phoenix fortress was located was relatively firm. The soil was also as hard as iron rock. Otherwise, it would not be as simple as being full of potholes. The ground might have already been penetrated through. After all, the two parties fighting here were super experts of the transcendent level or even the supreme level. There were also a large number of emperor-level and king-level experts fighting here. The damage caused to the ground was only potholes, which was because the ground was very hard. Because the ground outside was not flat, there were some hills and some depressions, and the height and depth were not small. This time, the place Yu Tianchang and the others had chosen was the back of a small hill. At this moment, Gu Yuxing and Feng Ligay should have already set up a formation at the planned place, including a psychedelic formation and a method to seal the void. These were all indispensable parts to trap the opponent, and Yu Tianshang's goal was to lure the expert of the Fu Shui clan out. The camp of the Fu Shui clan was more than 500 kilometers away, but Yu Tianshang had already investigated everything, so there was nothing for Kong Xinmu to worry about. Therefore, Yu Tianshang took Kong Xinmu directly to the ambush spot they had planned, and left first, planning to lure the opponent here. When Kong Xinmu came to the back of the hill, he found that it was really a good place to set up a trap. The front of the hill was a continuous mountain range that was thousands of meters high. Although it was thousands of meters high, it was indeed just a small hill for dragon martial artists. The shape of the back of the hill happened to be concave, which was a natural trap. It was rare for them to find such a place. When Kong Xinmu arrived, he didn't see any signs of Gu Yuxing or Feng Ligay. It wasn't until he wandered around the area for a short period of time that he discovered two graceful figures halfway up the hill. It was the two women. Kong Xinmu this way. Gu Yuxing gently beckoned to Kong Xinmu. Kong Xinmu didn't stand on ceremony and directly flew towards the two of them. This illusory formation is truly powerful. Kong Xinmu sighed with emotion from the bottom of his heart. His perceptive ability was very strong, and it was not something that a dragon warrior of his level could possess. However, even he could not see anything wrong with this valley. It was amazing. It could be seen that between Gu Yuxing and Feng Ligay, at least one of them had a profound understanding of formations. Of course. If I didn't have some ability, how could I survive in the outland battlefield? Feng Ligay pursed her lips and smiled. She didn't act humble and accepted Kong Xinmu's praise naturally. Sister Tianchong has already made her move. Let's just wait for her to return. Kong Xinmu, it's up to you now. Gu Yuxing smiled and said, whether you can kill the opponent or not will determine whether our operation will succeed. At the very least you have to be able to suppress the opponent. That way, the three of us can help too. I don't think we need help. Kong Xinmu shook his head and said, I've specially researched the Fu Shui tribe. It shouldn't be a problem to deal with this guy this time. It's good that you're confident. Feng Ligay comfortably nodded his head. Kong Xinmu and the two women hid here. As they waited, they discussed what might happen later and analyzed the target situation. The Fu Shui tribe general we want to lure this time is Deputy General Xueqi. Gu Yuxing analyzed and said, this Deputy General Xueqi is a transcendent god stage 3 expert. He has been on the battlefield for decades and has rich battle experience, so we must not underestimate him. This person's weakness is his lust. We've been investigating him for some time. On the battlefield, this Deputy General Xueqi once captured many women of our Dragon God clan. It is said that he enjoyed all of them when he brought them back. After that, those women had no way to survive, and they all died after being tortured. If we can get rid of this person this time, it will be considered as getting rid of a great threat to our Dragon God tribe. Hearing Gu Yuxing's words, Kong Xinmu nodded to himself. It had nothing to do with race. For such a person to capture young women and torture them, in Kong Xinmu's opinion, was an abhorrent act. No wonder the three women wanted to target this Deputy General Xueqi. If they killed him, it would be considered as revenge for the young women who had been tortured to death by him. At the same time, Kong Xinmu suddenly felt some movement in the small starry world in his hand. This made Kong Xinmu quite surprised. After all, there had been no movement in the small starry world. After all, he had just come out not long ago. However, maybe one of Gu Xinyue and the others had broken through to the Super God Star Power Inheritance level and finally came out of the Inheritance Hall? It was not convenient for Kong Xinmu to look at the situation in the small starry world now, because it would take a lot of his mind and energy. Once his mind was immersed in the small starry world, if Yu Tianchong came over with Deputy General Xueqi, the situation would be terrible. Given Yu Tianchong's beauty and figure, the success rate of luring Vice General Xueqi was very high. Moreover, since Vice General Xueqi had a hobby of torturing young girls, he wouldn't allow others to follow him. Therefore, it was relatively easy to lure such a target out of its hole and kill him. Who would have thought that a young girl like Yu Tianchong would have someone behind her who could kill Deputy General Xueqi? It should be noted that Deputy General Xueqi's perception was extremely sharp. Once he sensed an existence stronger than him, he would definitely escape directly, and would not give Kong Shinmu and the others a chance to escape. However, when he was lured into this valley and saw Kong Shinmu, Gu Yuxing, and Feng Ligay, he would most likely not think of escaping. At this time, it was time for the three women to operate again and directly activate the formation that sealed the void. Once the formation was activated, it would take Deputy General Xueqi time to escape. At that time, Kong Shinmu would have plenty of time to deal with this guy. If this guy discovered that something was wrong and wanted to escape, it would be too late. He would have to spend energy to escape, and once he was distracted, Kong Shinmu could kill him directly. Time passed during the planning process. Chapter 4986. After all, there were only 4 people in the Starry Sky Pocket World. They were Chu Yueqiang, Gu Xinyue, Chen Chong, and Wei Xiaoning. The 4 of them were in the process of breaking through to the Supreme God level. Even if they succeeded, they would need time to consolidate and digest it. It was impossible for them to leave the Starry Sky Pocket World so soon. Therefore, while waiting, Jiang Shenwu once again familiarized himself with the power of the Starry Sky inheritance that he had mastered, including the crystal runes, the gold runes, and the silver runes. He familiarized himself with all of them. After all, there were too many runes. Kong Shinmu even had to review them every day. Otherwise, he would feel rusty over time. It would take a lot of time to fully master thousands of Starry Sky inheritance runes. Even powerhouses with strong memories would not be able to fully master them in a short time. Kong Shinmu estimated that it would take him at least 1 or 2 years to fully master these Starry Sky inheritance runes. The complete mastery that he wanted was to be able to do it with ease, and the current him was still lacking a little bit of maturity. Of course, this would not affect his performance in the battle. As long as he was prepared for the battle in advance, it would be fine. Just like when he was fighting Zhao Qingtian, as long as he prepared every possible rune in advance, he would be able to use it on the spot. About 4 hours later. During this time, Kong Shinmu and the 2 women had been preparing. At this time, they finally felt a strong and abundant aura in the distance, rapidly approaching them. In front of the strong aura, there seemed to be a weak little guy running away. Everyone knew that it was Yu Tianchong. Although this was part of the plan, everyone could feel that Yu Tianchong seemed to be a little weak. They could not help but be a little worried. Could Yu Tianchong have been injured and suffered a loss under the hands of Deputy Xueqi? However, this was unlikely. After all, Yu Tianchong was only at the peak of the Dragon Emperor level. If she had suffered a loss under the hands of Deputy Xueqi, she probably would not have had the chance to escape so far and come to the ambush circle they had prepared. Not long after, everyone saw a bright-colored sky-robe phoenix feather dragon appear outside the small valley and fly into it. The heavenly robe phoenix feather dragon was Yu Tianchong's inheritance dragon. When her heavenly phoenix feather dragon body flew in, Kong Shinmu and the others heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. Obviously, Yu Tianchong was not injured. She just looked weak, which was probably a disguise. Following closely behind him was a muscular man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Behind him was a phantom of water that was thousands of feet tall. It was almost as tall as the hill that Kong Shinmu and the others were hiding in. Waves of terrifying energy emanated from the burly man. This was a supreme god from the Fu Shui tribe. The water god phantom that he had conjured emitted a shocking power that sent powerful ripples into the surroundings. When he was chasing Yu Tianchong, he was quite cautious. He did not pursue her at his fastest speed, which made him lose the best chance to catch her. When Yu Tianchong returned to the ambush circle, Kong Shinmu and the 2 women, who had been waiting for a long time, directly appeared on the mountainside. Seeing Yu Tianchong's heavenly clothes phoenix feather dragon body, the 3 of them were very surprised. There are 3 more? Deputy Xueqi, who had thick eyebrows and big eyes, raised his eyebrows when he saw Kong Shinmu and the other 2. He had no interest in Kong Shinmu at all. However, when he saw Gu Yuxing and Feng Ligu, he seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. His whole body trembled with excitement. Ha! I didn't expect to meet so many beauties of the Dragon God clan today. Let me enjoy myself. Deputy Xueqi looked impatient, but in fact, he was extremely cautious. As he spoke, he had already released several probing means. It was the water god spell condensed from the inheritance of the profound meaning of water. He did not even avoid the sight of the 4 of them. Instead, he directly used the probing power of the water god spell. endless water attribute power spread in all directions. Obviously, Deputy Xueqi was worried that there were other powerful beings lying in ambush in the surroundings. However, he soon detected nothing within a radius of hundreds of miles. He sneered and turned to look at Yu Tianchong and the others as if they were 3 weak Xiaobai rabbits. As for Kong Xinmu, Deputy Xueqi did not take Kong Xinmu seriously at all. Everyone, retreat. I will stop him. When Yu Tianchong came in front of them, Kong Xinmu directly transformed into a black dragon and soared up. He looked cold, but pretended to be a little flustered. Only his eyebrows showed some firmness. Although I don't know what you are doing here, but, today, you will go with Uncle Xueqi and have some fun. Deputy Xueqi sneered disdainfully when he saw Kong Xinmu fly up. As for you, boy, you are really an eyesore. As soon as he finished speaking, he condensed a terrifying water god spell in the air. That was the profound meaning of the water god. It condensed a trident in the void. This trident could actually break the void and roll up stormy waves, sweeping directly towards Kong Xinmu. Although it looked very imposing, its target was only Kong Xinmu. However, the endless profound meaning of water had sealed the void around Kong Xinmu, making it impossible for him to move, let alone escape. If it had been someone else, they would have been killed by the opponent. However, this guy was facing Kong Xinmu. Yu Tianchong and the other 2 women watched this scene nervously. The 3 women had gathered together and started to try to activate the formation that sealed the void. Originally, their strength was not enough to trap Deputy Xueqi. However, with the help of some special methods that they had prepared in advance, they had enhanced their control over the power of the void. This allowed the 3 of them to join forces and create a void seal to trap Deputy Xueqi. Although they were worried about Kong Xinmu, they did not slow down at all. They activated the void seal as fast as they could. At this moment, Kong Xinmu could only use the power of the Starry Sky inheritance in the face of Deputy Xueqi's profound meaning of water trident. Deputy General Xueqi didn't underestimate his opponent at all. Although the move he used seemed simple, the lethality was enough to seriously injure Zhao Qingtian when he bound the void where his opponent was. It could be seen that he did not hold back at all. Even though he was facing a weak-looking junior like Kong Xinmu, he still used his full strength. Chapter 4987. Unfortunately, Deputy General Xueqi did not expect that the seemingly weak Kong Xinmu in front of him actually had the terrifying strength of a supreme god. Just as Deputy General Xueqi attacked with the profound meaning of water trident to kill Kong Xinmu was already prepared. In the face of Deputy General Xueqi's all-out attack, the light of Starry Sky runes flashed all over Kong Xinmu's body, directly condensing a Starry Sky Kingdom alternate dimension. When the profound meaning of water trident swept over, Kong Xinmu's entire black dragon body had already hidden in the alternate dimension. This scene caused Deputy General Xueqi to be shocked. Deputy General Xueqi had extremely rich combat experience, and he had never seen anyone who could resist his attack in this way. After all, every attack of his was a means to seal the void, and it was impossible for ordinary existences to open up alternate dimensions when the void was sealed. In other words, it was impossible for existences at the Emperor level to open up alternate dimensions under his attack. After all, the strength of his attack was Supreme God level. But now, what appeared in front of him was Kong Xinmu opening up an alternate dimension, directly dodging the killing blow of his profound meaning of water trident. This caused Deputy General Xueqi to be alarmed. He realized that the situation was not quite right. After all, in his opinion, his strength should be able to crush all the dragon martial artists present, but now, Kong Xinmu had already dodged his first attack and stalled for time. Sure enough, immediately afterward, Deputy General Xueqi felt the surrounding void power begin to flow, and began to condense into a layer of void mirror wall, surrounding the entire valley, seemingly to seal off his escape route. Deputy General Xueqi did not dare to be careless, and he turned around, wanting to escape. Although he was not afraid of Kong Xinmu and the 3 women, the combat strength that Kong Xinmu had shown so far was not enough to make Deputy General Xueqi flee in fear. The key was that he was not familiar with this place. What if there was an ambush from the dragon gods? Then he would have to bear the consequences. Therefore, if he encountered any unfavorable situation, he would immediately want to slip away. This was also a form of prudence and stability. If not for this, It would be impossible for this guy to live for so long. Unfortunately, just as he was about to slip away and escape, Kong Shinmu appeared from the Starry Sky Kingdom again. Void Star Restriction. 1 crystal rune, 5 golden runes, and many silver runes gathered together to form a starry sky that enveloped Vice General Xueqi. Previously, Kong Shinmu had used this move to seal off Zhao Qingtian's path of retreat and then heavily injure him with the power of the 81 layers thunderous dragon explosion. Under the influence of Kong Shinmu's Phantom Ghost Book, this power was even more powerful than Vice General Xueqi's supreme divine weapon. What kind of monster is this kid? Deputy General Xueqi did not expect that he would not be ambushed by the Dragon God clan. Instead, it was a junior at the 7th level of the Emperor stage who had completely blocked his way. And from the looks of it now, this puny dragon monarch wouldn't be thinking of annihilating me, Vice General Xueqi, right? This was too unbelievable. Although Vice General Xueqi did not really believe this, he had to be on guard. He began to pay more attention to observing Kong Shinmu. Previously, he had been thinking of ways to escape, so he did not pay much attention to Kong Shinmu. But now, he had to pay attention to Kong Shinmu, because Kong Shinmu was clearly a threat to him. This time, the power of the star decomposition was attached to the 81 hexing dragon explosions, allowing Vice General Xueqi to immediately use a defensive water spell. Water God Expiation Mirror Wall. The Water God Expiation Mirror Wall was a move that condensed the power of the profound meaning of water. It presented a super-large defensive mirror wall that directly blocked Kong Shinmu's 81 hexing dragon explosions. 9-layered gem, 9-layered ultimate hexing dragon explosion, star decomposition. The 3 powers combined into one, and together, they erupted with superpower that belonged to the supreme divine level. And the Water God Expiation Mirror Wall was the strongest defense at level 3 of the supreme divine level. At this moment, the 2 sides completely collided in the void of the valley, and waves of power spread explosively in all directions. However, they were all blocked by the star restriction that Kong Shinmu had used, and could not penetrate through. Chapter 4988. The strength of both sides made the 3 female dragon martial artists present feel a little fascinated. They had only heard that Kong Shinmu had defeated Zhao Qingtian, but they had never seen Kong Shinmu unleash his strongest power. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, they were really shocked. This shock spread from the inside out, and they were a little stunned for a moment. To be honest, I have prepared a backup plan. If Kong Shinmu is not a match for him, he can also buy time for us, so that I have time to call for reinforcements. Yu Tianchong's expression was a little complicated. She said with a wry smile, but Kong Shinmu is worthy of being Kong Shinmu. He has grown so much in such a short time. It is said that he obtained a brand new power of inheritance and gained a lot in the middle-level relic. Gu Yuxing said softly, of course, there are others who obtained the power of inheritance with him, but they don't seem to be as outstanding as him. Yuxing, do you like him? Feng Ligay suddenly asked with a smile. How can I? Gu Yuxing blushed. I don't know him at all. How can I like him? But to be honest, I didn't expect him to rise so fast at first. Yes. Feng Ligay sighed, and his expression was a little complicated. When I was in Emperor Shi's Dragon Martial Arts Academy, he was just a little brother in front of me. But now he has become so strong. It's enough for him to be my brother. Then you should go and recognize him as your brother. Gu Yuxing pursed her lips and smiled. Okay, why not? Feng Ligay was a straightforward person. He laughed and said, of course, that's only if he is willing to be my brother. I think he looks very forthright on the surface, but in fact, he is still a young and immature boy. If I say I recognize him as my brother, I'm afraid he will blush on the spot. Although the 3 women were chatting and joking, they did not slack off in the slightest. They were still bursting out their own power, pouring all their power into the surrounding void ceiling barrier, so that the whole valley was sealed more and more firmly. Not to mention that Deputy General Xueqi was still fighting with Kong Shinmu. Even if Kong Shinmu was defeated now, it would be impossible for him to break through this space. After all, the 3 women were not completely unprepared for this plan. Originally, they had to be absolutely sure before they carried out such a plan. Otherwise, wouldn't they be inviting trouble to themselves? The method they used to seal the void this time was borrowed from some experts of the Iron Phoenix Fortress. It came from a holy item with 5 layers unlocked. As long as they could exert the power of the heaven and earth holy item, even if it was several times stronger than Deputy General Xueqi Li, it would not be able to break through the seal. Deputy General Xue Yuxing and could. The drawback was that the burden of a holy item with 5 layers unlocked was a little too heavy for the 3 of them. If they hadn't prepared a lot of recovery pills beforehand, they really wouldn't have been able to fully activate the 5 layers of the Saint Grade Heaven and Earth, 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 Saint Grade Heaven and Earth. The 5 layers of the holy item had almost reached the supreme level of power. If they wanted to activate it, it would still be a little difficult even with the combined power of the 3 women. Fortunately, this time, they had completely mastered the 5 layers of the holy item. Now, it could be said that it was a walk in the park for them when they used it. It was just that they had consumed a lot of cultivation resources to recover their strength. For them, these efforts were worth it. As long as they could successfully kill Deputy General Xue Li, their gains would far exceed their efforts. Now was the time for the 3 women to break through to the Super Shenron realm. Therefore, as long as they could kill Deputy General Xue Li, they would be able to move towards the Super Shenron realm and truly cross this hurdle to produce a qualitative change. If Kong Xinmu killed Deputy General Xue Li, then their gains would be a lot more. And if Kong Xinmu was not a match for him, they would let the helpers they had prepared in advance come to deal with Deputy General Xue Li. However, in that case they would be able to get more than half of the rewards. Therefore, they naturally hoped that Kong Xinmu could kill Deputy General Xue Li. Although they would have to give Kong Xinmu half of the rewards, the rest would be divided equally among the 3 of them. It would be enough for each of them to break through to the Super Shenron realm. At this moment, they had completely unleashed the power of the 5 layers of the holy item, sealing the void in the valley. This was a sealing power that had reached the supreme level. It was impossible for Deputy General Xue Li to escape, and it was impossible for him to even send a message out of this valley. All he could do was to face Kong Xinmu first. Even if he defeated Kong Xinmu, there were stronger existences of the dragon gods waiting for him. If it wasn't for Jiang Shenwu, the 5-layered Heaven and Earth Saint Grade Seal wouldn't have been able to trap him. After all, the Heaven and Earth Saint Grade Seal's ability to seal the void was too slow in the hands of the 3 girls. However, Kong Xinmu had stalled him, which meant that the best time for Deputy General Xue Li to escape had passed. At this moment, although Deputy General Xue Li had already fought with Kong Xinmu once or twice and was not at a disadvantage in front of Kong Xinmu, his face was completely black. This was because he discovered that there was an even stronger void sealing outside of Kong Xinmu's void star restriction, and that void sealing was what worried him the most. Although Kong Xinmu had shown combat power that did not match the grade of his blood essence, in Deputy General Xue Li's opinion, this would not put his life in danger. The real fatal thing was the stronger void sealing outside. When the void sealing was completely formed, it meant that there was no possibility for Deputy General Xue Li to escape today. He could only fight to the death and die in battle. He did not believe that the young female dragon warriors who came up with this plan today did not have any tricks up their sleeves. Therefore, as long as he was trapped, there were ways to kill him. In that case, Deputy General Xue Li would not sit still and wait for death. He knew that his only way to survive now was to capture hostages. As long as he could capture 1 or 2 hostages, he had a chance of survival. Therefore, he sneered and did not care about the direction of the 3 women. Instead, he looked at Kong Xinmu and said, "Boy, you hid your strength well. You are only a 7th-tier Emperor stage, but you can actually fight me to a draw. Unfortunately, you will definitely not be able to withstand my next move." Kong Xinmu narrowed his eyes and carefully observed his opponent's expression and movements. Chapter 49-89. According to the other party's thoughts, Jiang Shenwu should be preparing his defensive measures with all his might to receive the next move that he had mentioned. After all, Vice General Xue Li was a supreme god-rank powerhouse with rich combat experience. He thought that facing a kid like Kong Xinmu would be very stressful. Therefore, after he sneered, Kong Xinmu should be prepared to deal with his attack. Then, Vice General Xue Li could try to capture the 3 women while Kong Xinmu was preparing to defend himself. To be honest, the 3 women really didn't have any defensive means. If Kong Xinmu couldn't rescue them in time, the 3 women would really be captured by him. If that happened, all the plans for today would be ruined, and the 3 women would lose their lives. After all, Kong Shinmu didn't have any plans to call for reinforcements, and it was almost impossible for Kong Shinmu to rescue them from Vice General Xueqi by himself. After all, the strength of both sides was about the same. If Kong Shinmu forced a move, Vice General Xueqi would have time to kill one or two of them to threaten Kong Shinmu. Therefore, once the three women fell into Vice General Xueqi's hands, the situation would take a turn for the worse. That was why it was said that old ginger was spicier. If Vice General Xueqi's plan could be carried out, he would be able to turn defeat into victory and escape from a hopeless situation. This was the power of being a vice general of the water race's army. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu wasn't easy to deal with. Although he didn't have as much combat experience as Vice General Xueqi, Kong Shinmu was no longer the hothead he was when he first became a dragon warrior. When the surrounding void seal was completely formed, Jiang Shenwu had already put himself in the other party's shoes and considered things from the other party's perspective. The conclusion he came to was that the only way for this guy to survive was to capture the captives as hostages. Therefore, his target could only be the three women. Moreover, even if Kong Shinmu couldn't think of this point, he still had the Black Dragon's consciousness and the Demon God Ancestor's consciousness in his mind. If they were to compare how sinister they were, which one of them was worse than Vice General Xueqi? Therefore, it was impossible for Kong Shinmu to fail. When Vice General Xueqi said those words in order to attract Kong Shinmu's attention and make Kong Shinmu prepare a defensive measure, Kong Shinmu was already on guard. He played along and pretended to gather his strength to defend himself. Just as Jiang Shenwu was about to defend himself, Deputy General Xueqi immediately took action. The water god phantom behind her condensed countless dark blue water profound tentacles. These water profound tentacles were extremely agile, and they shuttled through the void at an extremely fast speed. They were like fish in water, and were about to pass through the three women in an instant. This was truly a matter of a split second. Once he succeeded, the three women would fall into his hands, and the overall situation would be worrisome. However, just as Vice General Xueqi made his move, Kong Shinmu also made his move. Starry Sky Isolation. Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky Inheritance technique was once again displayed. This time it was the Starry Sky Isolation, which could completely isolate two spaces. Moreover, the isolated spaces could see each other, but they couldn't touch each other, and they wouldn't be connected to each other. When Vice General Xueqi condensed countless water-profound tentacles, trying to attack the three women and capture them alive, Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky Isolation also directly broke out. An invisible Starry Sky Isolation barrier appeared directly in front of the three women. Before the three women could react to what was going on, thousands of water-profound tentacles shuttled through the void and directly bombarded the Starry Sky Isolation barrier. Countless water-profound tentacles bombarded the Starry Sky Isolation barrier, and then kept wriggling, which made people shudder with fear. Yu Tianchong and the other two women's faces turned cold. They didn't expect that Vice General Xueqi would suddenly attack them. Originally, they should have thought of this, but because they were shocked by Kong Shinmu's fighting strength, they were a little careless. Now, what shocked them even more was that Kong Shinmu seemed to be able to predict Vice General Xueqi's actions in advance, and displayed a Starry Sky Isolation technique in front of them, completely isolating them from the void-shuttling tentacles launched by Vice General Xueqi. How is this possible? When Vice General Xueqi saw this scene, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. According to his assumption, Kong Shinmu should now be preparing a defensive method to deal with his next attack. How could such a young dragon sovereign brat possibly see through his thoughts? Even if he could see through his thoughts, it was impossible for him to execute it so quickly. It had to be known that Vice General Xueqi was already preparing when he said those words. Moreover, after saying those words, he immediately launched an attack. Yet, Kong Shinmu was able to keep up with it. All of this was because Kong Shinmu was extremely sensitive to the power of the void. Not only did he cultivate the power of the Starry Sky Inheritance, but he also merged with the Centipede Ink Beast. The Centipede Ink Beast's ability was originally extremely sensitive. Therefore, when there was a slight fluctuation in the void in front of the three women, Kong Shinmu had already noticed it and realized that Vice General Xueqi had made a move. In this way, it wasn't a big deal for Kong Shinmu to prepare a method to isolate the void in advance. However, in the eyes of Vice General Xueqi and the three women, this move seemed very incredible. Kong Shinmu's combat awareness was too strong. This could only be described as true talent. Take Zhao Qingtian for example. Even if he was given the same ability as Kong Xinmu, his performance in each battle would definitely be different. For example, someone of Zhao Qingtian's level might not be able to react in time to protect the three women. Now, with the protection of Kong Xinmu's Starry Sky isolation, the three women would almost not encounter any danger, so they didn't need to use some of the methods they had prepared before. When Kong Xinmu blocked Vice General Xueqi's attack, he once again erupted with his strongest power. Phantom Ghost Book. 9 Layers Gem. Void Gem. 9 Layers Extreme Dao. Centipede Dragon Explosion. A total of 81 layers of Centipede Dragon Explosion once again erupted around Vice General Xueqi, and the terrifying power caused the space to tremble. Vice General Xueqi was not to be outdone. He condensed dozens of water beasts with the profound meaning of water and directly swallowed the power of Kong Xinmu's Centipede Dragon Explosion before exploding in the bodies of the water beasts. Dozens of water beasts swallowed the power of the Centipede Dragon Explosion and exploded into pieces. Chapter 4990. Kong Xinmu and Deputy General Xueqi fought back and forth, and their strength was not much different. In fact, Deputy General Xueqi was much stronger than Zhao Qingtian, whom Kong Xinmu had defeated before. However, even though Kong Xinmu still needed to protect the three women this time, he did not fall into a disadvantageous position in the fierce battle with Deputy General Xueqi. After the three women were almost threatened by Deputy General Xueqi for the first time, they began to protect themselves very carefully. They used another ability of the Void Sealing Sacred Grade, which was to set up an illusory realm. The appearance and shroud of the illusion made the three women's figures disappear from the battlefield. Whether it was in the eyes of Kong Xinmu or Deputy General Xueqi, they completely disappeared. This was a holy treasure that had unlocked 5 layers of seals. Naturally, its ability was not something that Kong Xinmu and Deputy General Xueqi could break. In this way, Deputy General Xueqi could only fight against Kong Xinmu. However, he looked a little absent-minded, as if he was always thinking of a way to escape. After all, even if he could defeat Kong Xinmu, he felt that he could not escape from this situation. This gave Kong Xinmu a big advantage. In the case of Deputy General Xueqi's anxiety, he made more and more mistakes. Kong Xinmu and Deputy General Xueqi exchanged at least 10 moves with each other, and gradually found that Deputy General Xueqi's strength had begun to decline. Although at the level of Super Shenron, the power in his body was almost infinite, Kong Xinmu had the power of devouring. Every time they fought, Kong Xinmu integrated the power of the Starry Sky inheritance with his devouring power, and then devoured the opponent's power. In this way, not only could Kong Xinmu devour the opponent's power for his own use, but he could also weaken the opponent's power to a greater extent. Under the constant devouring, Deputy General Xueqi found that the power of his every move had almost reached the maximum, and he could hardly retain much power. As long as I can injure him, I have a chance of winning. Kong Xinmu thought to himself. At this critical juncture, he was incomparably calm. He observed Deputy General Xueqi's every move, and when he made a move, he would also make a move. In a direct confrontation, neither side would suffer any damage. But Kong Xinmu was looking for an opportunity. Finally, after the two sides had exchanged nearly 20 moves, Vice General Xueqi finally revealed a small flaw due to his anxiety. This small flaw became an opportunity for Kong Xinmu to find. The power of the Voidwalker Ghost Tome exploded forth with incredible speed. As for the opponent's Water God Phantom, it did not have enough defensive power at all. At this moment, it was directly smashed apart by Kong Xinmu's 9th stage Extreme Dao Roaring Dragon Blast. Although Kong Xinmu had only unleashed an ordinary 9th stage Extreme Dao Hui Dragon Burst in order to launch a sneak attack as quickly as possible, it still wasn't something that his opponent's Water God Phantom could withstand. The Water God Phantom itself didn't have much defensive power. Although the defense of Deputy General Xueqi's Water God Phantom was considered very strong when dealing with an Emperor-level entity, it was practically non-existent in front of Kong Xinmu. Since he had revealed a flaw and a moment of negligence, Kong Xinmu would seize this opportunity to expand his advantage and ultimately win. Sure enough, Kong Xinmu succeeded in one fell swoop. His opponent's Water God Phantom was blasted apart by his 9th stage Extreme Dao Hui Dragon Burst, leaving a scar that could not be healed. This scar might not be fatal for an ordinary cultivator. After all, Such a scar wouldn't reduce Deputy General Xueqi's combat power at all, and it wouldn't affect his subsequent performance. However, Kong Shinmu's sneak attack had been able to leave a scar that was only a foot long, which was already quite good. Because of this, his opponent didn't pay much attention to it. Unfortunately, what Deputy General Xueqi didn't know was that Kong Shinmu's greatest trump card was his devouring power. As soon as the scar that was only a foot long appeared, Kong Shinmu's power erupted. The devouring power was like a torrent as it surged deep into his opponent's body and began to devour the power of the water god phantom along the way. At first, Deputy General Xueqi didn't sense anything wrong. He was still looking for a way to escape this place, looking everywhere for a flaw in the void ceiling barrier. However, Deputy General Xueqi soon sensed that something was wrong. His expression changed slightly when he sensed that the power of his water god phantom was being devoured bit by bit. This shocked him a little. What kind of ability was this? How could it devour the power of his water god phantom? After discovering this, he immediately tried to stop it. Unfortunately, under the constant harassment of Kong Shinmu, he couldn't concentrate on preventing his power from being devoured. Moreover, he soon discovered that he couldn't stop this devouring power at all. This caused Deputy General Xueqi to be terrified. This was the most terrifying thing. His power was constantly being devoured and he couldn't do anything about it. He could only watch as his power was being consumed. If Kong Shinmu wasn't around, this speed of power devouring would be nothing. As a supreme god-level expert, he could rely on his own recovery speed to replenish his power. However, there was still Kong Shinmu eyeing him covetously and constantly launching fierce attacks at him. Although the attacks were all 9th stage Extreme Dao Hui Dragon Burst and the 9th stage Gemstones 81 stage Hui Dragon Burst, this simple method was the most brutal method, and Vice General Xueqi had to expend a lot of energy every time he blocked it. As a result, he couldn't recover the power that had been devoured in his body. This caused his condition to become weaker and weaker. Deputy General Xueqi had never heard of such a battle before. He had already reached the supreme god level, yet there was still someone fighting a battle of attrition. However, the key was that under the continuous devouring power, this battle of attrition was almost fatal to Deputy General Xueqi. Next, Deputy General Xueqi knew that he had to get rid of Kong Shinmu first. Therefore, he stopped trying to find an opening to escape and focused on fighting Kong Shinmu. He knew that if he didn't focus, he would soon be defeated by Kong Shinmu. As a result, Vice General Xueqi's attacks became incomparably violent. Every move was like a violent storm, enveloping Jiang Shenwu's body and even covering the entire area within the void blockade. Deputy General Xueqi's power was extremely powerful. Every attack made Kong Shinmu feel immense pressure. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.